Welcome, friends, it's the MovieFilm Podcast. MovieFilm Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about movies. MovieFilm Podcast on the radio.
This year, what we've always known becomes what we've always feared.
If we launch and we're wrong, what's left of Russia is going to launch at us.
I'm captain of this boat. I don't have to think this over.
There's no time for doubt.
The missile system's ready to launch in 6 minutes.
You repeat this order or I'll find somebody who will.
Hell no, you won't, sir.
And nothing can stop the tide. Crimson Tide.
God help you if you're wrong.
If I'm wrong, then we're at war. God help us all.
Welcome to a movie film commentary track. My name is Zachy Hassan. I'm here with Brian Hall.
Hey, how's it going, Zachy?
Brian, you know, one thing I've realized is I would not do well on a submarine.
Dude, I had the same. For the listeners, I literally just finished watching this right before I hopped on. And I thought, like, God bless them all, but I would not thrive in this environment. I don't know that I was cut out for the military, and not everybody is. So it's like you hope the people who have the mind and temperament for it, like, good. Those are the people that should be there, and I should be over here.
I watch all the high testosterone, finagling going on, and I was like, I think I'm going to be the Steve Zahn in this whole thing and just sit back. And then he gets creamed in the face with the thing. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Maybe that's about right. Honestly, I could just see you and I with wrenches, like, and then like something hits us in the face, and we both just shrug, and we drown.
So we are here to watch Crimson Tide.
Yes, man. I'm gonna go right out and say it. My memory of this movie is that I really love it. Like, this is a great movie, and then finishing it right now, I'm like, man, this is a really great movie. I love this movie.
I was like, I finished rewatching, and I'm like, maybe a perfect movie,
I think
right?
so. I think so. I think this is going to be kind of an enthusiastic one.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to having a conversation. The timing is appropriate. It is celebrating its 30th anniversary, hereabouts as we record this. Wow. And obviously, in addition to that, we are recording mere weeks after the passing of the great Gene Hackman, who is certainly one of the anchors, no pun intended, in this story.
Yeah. Oh man, what a powerhouse in this movie.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a powerhouse of powerhouses.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a whole bunch of hey that guys who have all gone on to become that guy.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is going to be a fun one. Also by the late Tony Scott, one of his best. If I remember correctly, Brian, when Tony Scott passed away in 2012, you said that this was your favorite movie of his.
Yeah, I think it still is, honestly.
There you go. So we are ready to watch Crimson Tide. We're ready to set sail, one might say.
Down bubble.
Yes. All of that stuff. Insert nautical terminology here.
Ahoy.
That's about it. That's all I got. So if you want to watch along with us, you certainly can. If not, we'll try to keep the conversation interesting as we embark. As we take a deep dive.
I was just going to say, yep. As we descend. Yeah.
Etc. And so on.
As we deploy buoy.
There you go.
All right, Brad.
Okay. we got to fill 2 hours. Come on. hold some of that in reserve.
Yeah.
So we will do the usual thing. We will hit play on 3. 1, 2, 3, play. And I'm ready. What about you, Brian?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Let's do this. 1, 2, 3, play. I gotta say, every time I see this logo, it makes me nostalgic for 90s action movies.
Totally. Yes. And I mean, if we're getting down to it, well, I mean, there's some things I don't want to miss over here, but I was going to say that it's really interesting to look back at the eras of comedy or of action. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a really unique time for action that I feel like is on the precipice of a little bit of a shift.
That's right.
In 1 year, like, this is a deadly serious movie, right? And in a year we'll have an action movie, but what if it stars Nicolas Cage? Right? Which is great. I love The Rock, but it's a little like, what if we inject a little bit more humor into this and, slap our knees a little while we're experiencing the action? And I was thinking, well, this is what I wanted to talk about here. The title card thing we're getting here with the three most powerful men in the world: President of the United States, President of Russian Republic, Captain of a U.S. nuclear missile submarine.
Yeah.
Frightening. I mean, my mind is like jumping all over the place, because I was also going to talk about just submarine movies and just how, man, you talk about, like, we always say boxing movies. Sports movies in general are always, even though we're not huge sports people, like, you just cannot deny a great sports movie, because you will, if it's working correctly, you will stand up and cheer by the end of it. You just can't help it. It knows how to make you, rouse you and make you root, for the hero or whatever. And boxing movies especially, I don't think I've ever seen a boxing movie I didn't like. And I'm starting to realize too, have I ever seen a submarine movie I didn't like? There's just something about the bottled up tension. There's nowhere to go, and sweaty people needing to get the job done, and there's just something so I don't know, potent about it, right?
I'm going to say K-19, The Widowmaker. I'm not a big fan of that one.
I don't remember that one very well. That's the Harrison Ford one, right? Where doesn't he play a Russian?
He plays a Russian, and it loses points because of his Boris Badenov accent.
Yes. I feel like I might have shared this story before, but I have a friend who worked at a movie studio, and they were going to make that movie, and they weren't convinced that Ford could do that.
Okay.
Play, a Russian accent. And so he was in a conference room where Ford had to get on a phone call and do the accent for all the people in the room to prove that he could do it. I mean, can you imagine, like, getting Indiana Jones on the call and be like, all right, Ford, like, let's hear it. And then having to be like, nuclear vessels, or whatever. Like, I don't know. But it's funny in this moment too, the 90s, it does feel like Hollywood was really into submarines, right? Where we had like Hunt for Red October in 90, and then, like you said, K-19, U-571, Crimson Tide. It's kind of like teenage girls have their horse era. It's like, like Hollywood was in its submarine era here.
Yeah, it's actually, worth mentioning here that after the movie ended, I was like, I think right here, the woman playing Denzel's wife is the one and only female character in this movie.
I literally, dude, I think we had the exact same thoughts. I was like, this woman and her daughter are literally the only women in this entire movie. Yeah.
And she doesn't even get to like say her line of dialogue, because she just mouths like, "Where are you going?" or something like that.
Right. I do like this opening scene, by the way, because I hadn't seen this in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I had kind of forgotten about this opening on a birthday party. We see that Viggo's character is, family friends with Denzel's character. But I also like seeing, when the magician is asking for a volunteer and Denzel's character is like, pick me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the only moment of like, just being kind of not having to be deadly serious or following protocol or having some, airs about him in front of his superiors or whatever. Like, he's just being a dad.
Just a guy.
And that's the only moment we get to see that. And it's kind of nice to see it.
Yeah.
Right?
I remember watching this, and this was the movie that put Viggo Mortensen on the map for me.
Mm.
But if you would have told me that, in 6 years he's going to end up playing like one of the most iconic characters in all of movies.
I know, right? Right. And almost on accident, right? Not accident, but it wasn't meant to be him.
He was not the first choice for Aragorn. That's right.
Incredible how that works out, isn't it?
So this is a Simpson and Bruckheimer joint, and it kind of it was them sort of coming in from the cold a little bit, because they had a little run there where things weren't going so well, and then this brought them back.
Yeah. So in the 80s, what did we have? We had Beverly Hills Cop and Top Gun, and
right,
even like Flashdance, right? I think was
Flashdance
kind of early for them. Mm-hmm. But then, I mean, are you alluding to like Days of Thunder?
Days of Thunder didn't do so hot.
What was the other?
Yeah, and then there's some other stuff, right, in the early 90s.
Yeah. But then they became like King of the Mountain. when it came to this
well,
stuff.
Don
Well,
Simpson,
I should say, yeah.
it was his reprieve was a brief one.
That's true.
Because
That's true.
he passed away about a year after this movie came out.
Yeah. Yeah. But I remember being a teenager and seeing the Bruckheimer name. It was like, well, that's the good housekeeping stamp of approval right there for me.
Yeah, right. For certain kind of thrillers. And to your point, I mean, this is different in that regard. Like I think post The Rock, you sort of have an image of what the Bruckheimer name represents. And this movie's a lot more cerebral and a lot slower paced, and I don't mean that in a bad way than you'd expect. I mean the marketing, everything really centers on the fissure between Washington and Hackman, and that's about an hour in.
Yeah. You think that's the movie, but that comes later on.
Yeah,
but we're getting a good glimpse of that tension right here. I mean, right off the bat, these two are just, I don't know. I don't even know if there is a respect. I mean, probably to some degree, but there's just a distrust or something like beneath the surface,
Well, it's interesting to me because the one thing I kept thinking about as I watched, like reflexively, having seen the movie, and we know generally the disposition of the story, you're sort of on Denzel's side, right?
Yes.
And I was thinking about, I was like, for me watching, it's hard for me to be on Hackman's side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because the movie takes great pains to be like, you were both right, you were both wrong, and I'm like, I still feel like he's wrong, Gene Hackman,
I know, and that's what's so amazing about this movie is how many times have we seen this?
A bunch.
And like we're still having to talk about it. Like this is a movie that makes you need to have a conversation about it afterwards. And it's like I was surprised how much I kind of agreed with Hackman for the first half of the movie.
And that's interesting.
Because, well, not agreed, but like understood his position on things.
Oh, you definitely
drill.
understand that, right? Like he's the skipper of the boat. He's been doing it for however long, and he has a certain way he runs things. So you get that.
Yes.
But to me, the central, Hunter is like, listen, man, let's not do something we can't take back until we have absolute clarity. Yeah. Like, to me, that's just what makes sense to me. Now, I'm not on a submarine, so I don't have to worry about encountering this scenario in real life. But I think that central idea is where I'm like, I don't know that I can get on board with where the captain is,
Well, and what I want to clarify a little bit, at the end of the day, I do come down, pretty squarely on if you don't know if there's any uncertainty about whether or not to fire a nuclear missile.
Yeah.
You err on the side of caution. Like that's my final stance. But I mean, if
there's one thing I remember from my dad telling me, son, if there's any doubt about launching a nuclear missile.
Yeah. But like, what I like is that they don't set up Hackman to just be either of them to be one way. They contain multitudes. Right. And so my point is, I entered this movie or started this movie thinking, of course, I'm like on Denzel's side because it's Denzel Washington. I remember how it ends and everything. But I just remember Hackman being kind of like a bullish heavy or something.
Right.
But I like that the movie makes it complicated because, again, with the drill thing, I'm like, no, that probably is a good time to run a drill. In this sort of scenario when you need these men to be ready for a situation that difficult. Right. So I like that it doesn't make it, straightforward.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
And that's what makes it interesting, the back and forth, because you can be like, well, I see why. However, I feel this, and and really at the end of the day, I mean, the movie just basically reveals flaws in protocol.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. 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 You can easily see a version of this movie where they sand off the complexity and you just make Hackman the straight up heavy.
Yes. Yeah,
And as
right
a
from the
result-
start.
From the start. And it, you say, well, I can't imagine Gene Hackman would have been thrilled to play a character like that.
Mhm.
But I think it's the fact that they are both such compelling performers
Mhm.
that makes it riveting,
Yeah. And I think when it really all comes down to it, those two combined would be the perfect captain. Right? And that's what's kind of interesting about it.
And I
that's what I
suppose
love.
I suppose that's the realization the Navy has at the end, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they kind of do.
Yeah.
But that's what makes this so interesting. It's not a good guy versus a bad guy necessarily.
Right.
And it's just two capable people with like different philosophies or whatever you want to call it in a really heightened situation with not a lot of time. And so you're watching two capable people, in combat, and that's riveting.
Yeah. And it's worth, acknowledging sort of the period of time in which this movie came out, which is when Russia was considered an ally of the United States.
Right.
There was all this unease still, but the film itself is very much, it feels like it's still working through, the Cold War malaise,
Yep.
And all of that stuff is very interesting because we forget there was that window where Russia was allied with the U.S. Hey, like John Connor said, aren't they our friends now?
I was literally gonna quote that. Yeah. Aren't they our friends now?
Now Gandolfini, gosh, I'm pretty sure this is the first time I saw him.
I'm pretty sure. I don't think I'd seen True Romance by this
No,
point.
I definitely didn't see True Romance before. Yeah, well, Tony Scott, that's the other thing, right? I mean, True Romance was a huge flop when it came out. And he nonetheless came back strong. True Romance and also Days of Thunder didn't do well,
Right.
but he came back really strong with this, and I would say he never stopped hitting until he passed away.
Yeah, and we should say, speaking of True Romance and Tony Scott, I mean, Quentin Tarantino famously did a script polish on this, and that's pretty easily evidenced in that last scene we saw where they're arguing over actors who played, captains in movies and whatever, like his sort of pop culture flavor.
It's so weird because to me that stuff does stick out. Like it's like, did Quentin only do these? Like, it's not like he polished the whole script. It's like they just gave him pages.
Yeah. I don't remember what the guy says, but it's the cadence of what Gandolfini says there is so Tarantino. It's so obvious when you know it.
Well, and it's hilarious because it's like you've got like Robert Towne did a polish, and you got probably Maya Angelou did a polish for all we know.
That's right. Which I know we already talked about this, but I still wouldn't believe you if it was like true or false. Maya Angelou did a polish pass on the movie Outbreak. Like, it's like, well, that's an easy false, but nope, true.
Yeah. So there's this weird energy, and people always talk about the Silver Surfer dialogue, and they're like, well, that's clearly Tarantino. But it almost feels like Tarantino put that in there not thinking they would actually include it.
Sure, right.
Because it feels so like it's such a left turn. It's so odd.
Yeah. I do love, though, how, they don't waste any fat in this movie. Like, that argument pays off later between those two guys, being
That's
at
true.
odds with one another.
That's true.
But it also is a display of their unease, the tension that's happening.
Yeah.
By the way, this scene always makes me think of that
Simpsons,
yeah, Homer Tide.
That's right.
Where they
I was literally going to bring that up.
out in the rain, getting addressed.
Simpson Tide, I think that one was called,
Simpsons Tide. Sorry, yeah. That one I remember when I was in college. Obviously, longtime listeners know we're huge Simpsons guys. But in college, it was weird then to have roommates that didn't watch The Simpsons or didn't like The Simpsons.
Oh.
And I remember being like, I don't understand, And so anyway, I remember them being like, oh, it's like this, or I don't get it, or whatever. And I sat them down, and it was new episodes happening. Well, they're still happening. What am I talking about? But Simpson Tide was the episode that Sunday, and I that was what we watched together, and they thought it was hysterical, and I won them over with that episode.
It's a good one. That's a good one to do it with.
Yeah, like we have that scene later where they're having dinner.
Yes, that's right.
Philosophies of war, and like that.
I want peas
Yeah.
with a fork, you know?
Or yeah, he's like, and how do we get peas? He's like, with a knife. That's right.
At the edge of a bayonet or whatever.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah, Gene Hackman too. You know, the '90s was a very fruitful time for him in terms of really memorable performances.
Yeah.
Because he had just won an Academy Award just 2 years earlier, and then he was in this. He was in The Quick and the Dead. He was great in that.
Yeah.
Enemy of the State. You know, really a strong part of his career.
Yep. I mean, I'm sure I saw all of that before. Well, maybe I was gonna say Superman. I didn't see Superman super early.
Really?
Yeah. Wait. By the way, I have to call it that shot. Gosh, it's so beautiful, isn't it? Like it's. There were so many shots earlier that I wanted to call out also. I mean, even the goodbye with Denzel and his family in the car, like the choice not to put the camera in the car, but to shoot it through the window with the rain dribbling down the windshield. I mean, it's like watching this made me think, like, I really miss, when directors were more visual artists,
right,
than they seem to be right now. Like this movie isn't flashy, but it has flair and panache. It just has the right doses of it.
Right.
Where it's not calling attention to itself, but it gives this movie attention and an edge and I don't know. And Tony Scott is just, I mean, obviously all his movies carry that, right? Like there's such tension within the frame at all times. And it's almost like a magic trick he knows how to pull. But it's through choices like that, like put a camera in the car or outside the car, let the rain get in the way of this good, sad goodbye. It's just so many times throughout this movie, I kept thinking like, ooh, you could take a screen grab of that, and just the lighting is so beautiful. And yeah.
By the way, it's worth mentioning the footage there that we see of the sub as it's departing. That's the real Alabama.
Yes, this is an incredible story. If you want to, talk
the Navy did not give cooperation because obviously they don't like this type of story, So the producers had to find ways. They found out, well, it's not illegal to film a submarine,
right? Because it's in public view.
Yeah, exactly. So they just went out on the ocean, I think, with a helicopter, and just filmed it until it descended.
Yeah, and my understanding is that the captain, because he was miffed about it, descended. And that's exactly what they wanted. So they got this incredible footage of the submarine descending. But yeah, I mean, you can imagine the Navy. It's like, well, here's how the Navy could accidentally start World War III.
Yeah, I think the idea initially, the Navy was under the impression that it's a story about like a war game that goes awry.
Yeah, like a computer. They said it was going to be Hunt for Red October meets 2001.
Right.
Where like a computer system goes rogue and accidentally could possibly start World War III, and how do they counter
and
that?
They're like, oh, sure, look at all the things we can do to stop that. And then once they found out what it was actually about, it was like, oh, oops.
Yeah. Wait, is that Air Force One where they're giving the tour to all the bad guys, showing them how Air Force One works? It's kind of like that. They didn't realize they were letting Hollywood in and accidentally giving them a story that would undermine the Navy.
Yeah, I think like at that time, like I don't think there was even like, oh, we're gonna put one over on the Navy. I think that was the initial idea.
No. Yeah, no, for sure.
And then it sort of morphed into what it became.
And that does sound like a cool plot. I mean, I could see that being a cool Bruckheimer movie.
Yeah, just not this one.
Yeah, but I think they were showing, like, demonstrating protocols.
That's right.
And things, and that they ended up putting into the film. And you have to imagine they left and were like, War Games kind of covered this. Like, did you notice when they said that this person had to concur with that? And what if they didn't concur? And you can kind of imagine how it went from there.
Yeah.
And it's still 30 years later, it's a really juicy concept.
And I think the fact that it does feel so sort of analog is what has allowed it to remain timeless,
I also wondered, there's so many, like you say, like analog clocks and things that they're depending on, you know, for like pinpoint accuracy and timing. And I wonder now what a modern sub looks like, right? Like what
I would imagine things have not changed.
See, I was wondering that because you think you could get maybe more precision in the digital era, but on the other hand, those things could fail.
That's the thing. When you're that deep underwater, do you want to be relying on your digital technology to hold up for you? You know?
Yeah, yeah. Here's that scene that they do in The Simpsons. You know, it's interesting that this movie isn't that old, and I think people have seen it and like this movie, but it's not, you know, something that I think pervades culture.
No,
and it's interesting that The Simpsons were like, let's do a whole episode based on Crimson Tide.
Well, but it was relatively recent at that time too, right? But no, I agree with you. Like this, it feels like this was very zeitgeisty when it came out, and I don't know that it's held on in that way. You know, I think people who watch it tend to like it. I know I watched it with my kids and they loved it, you know?
Yeah.
But it is weird how it feels to me, and maybe my perception is wrong, that it hasn't had like a pervasive afterlife, you know?
Yeah, I agree. But I actually, when it ended, I was going to text my dad and be like, hey, I don't know when the last time you watched this was, but put it on. You're going to love this.
You should.
Yeah.
See, the dynamic between Ramsey and Hunter, I think it's an interesting one because obviously there is this racial element that's underlying it, and it's made explicit at the end. You know, when they're having the conversation about the horse. You know, and it occurs to me like, you know, Hunter, he checks every box. He's done everything right career-wise and everything else, right? And yet there's this presumption like he doesn't know what he's doing, right? And you know, I mean that's I think to me you can't read this movie without a racial element as part of the story,
for sure. I mean, right down to their first interaction.
Exactly,
just the way he condescends, you know,
right? And yet it's not like, you know, they don't need to make that so explicit, you know. And I think that allows a more richness of readings.
Yeah You know, it's funny, sometimes I watch movies and I'll see people smoking cigarettes and I'll think, cigarette looks nice. But then I've never wanted a cigarette or a cigar less watching this movie, because you're just like, how insufferable would it be to be stuck in this tin can with people who keep lighting up tobacco products? Like, I'd be like,
seriously,
it'd be unbearable. But yeah, that's what I like about this movie. I mean, what you're sort of getting at here is just the subtlety of it all, you know. And it's, I mean, again, this is kind of an interesting time for action movies, because I mean, this is sort of like Failsafe meets Top Gun, or something like this, right? Like, this could be a radio drama, but it feels like a hulking 90s action film. You know, there's like an intelligence to this, and it really is a war of words. This whole movie, really, aside from maybe like 2 action sequences, is a war of words. And I wish we could still get things like this. Like, now it feels like we get, you know, stuff like Red Notice or whatever, you know, on Netflix. Like, those are our action films, and that's fine that those exist, but I wish we could also get these too. I mean, I was thinking, not to be so down on Netflix, but like, we get a Netflix original movie like every week, right? But like, never in my wildest imagination would this be the movie that pops up one week on Netflix. You know, there's just a level of craft, and I don't know. I don't mean to be down on them, but I wish it could. Like, why doesn't it? You know?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. By the way, like, we see Ryan Felipe there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that like all we see of him in this movie?
MacGruber's Ryan Felipe?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's him and Steve Zahn.
I mean, Zahn gets like some dialogue, right?
He gets a moment, but yeah, they're like sort of like young, you know, character actor-y sort of things. And I mean, I guess he still remains a character actor in a way, but it's kind of cool. Yeah. Seeing these people we know will recognize more moving forward.
Yeah.
That Thing You Do was about this year, right? Or maybe the next year.
96.
Yeah. They don't realize they have the guitarist of the O-Neaters.
That's
On
the
board.
O-Neaters. Yeah, see all this stuff right here. I'm like, nope, I would not do well on a submarine.
Yeah, I do love, by the way, I was thinking the Tony Scott of it all. It's like, all right, well, there's like a fire in the kitchen. It's like, no, man, it's like friggin' backdraft in that kitchen.
Yeah, right?
I mean, because, why not?
Because why not? Hey, it's true. That's the funny thing is the action is mostly, in the performance, right? People aren't, this is not Con Air or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's remarkable to me is how Tony Scott in his execution, like let me put it this way. You can see two versions of this. It's sort of like, remember that Simpsons where they're watching soccer?
Yeah. yes.
Right. And Kent Brockman is doing the play-by-play. He's like holding, and then the Latin American announcer's like holding.
That is a great comparison. Yeah.
Like you can see the slightly subtler version of this, which would be one way, and it's like with Tony Scott, it's just everything's amped up. We got this like Batman and Robin-esque color scheme inside the submarine.
Yeah, I thought about the lighting a lot.
Right? Like there's like neon and whatever. And it's all, and really, again, it's a war of words at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
It's like Kim Jong-un says in the interview, what's more dangerous than nuclear weapons? Words.
That's hilarious. But there is like this magic trick, and I don't know exactly what it is, but I always say this when I see a movie that I don't like or that looks uninteresting. It's the same. They have the same tools that every filmmaker has. They have lights and a camera. And how do some people like Tony Scott, look at these close-ups on these guys just watching this card being read out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And it still feels like it's simmering.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is that? I mean, it's obviously all his movies feel this way, so he knows what it is.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know. I miss that a little bit. I think some people either don't know that trick or they don't care about the trick, and I feel we do see this intentional visual stuff like less these days. I think whether people aren't interested in it or they haven't learned it or they're just like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like weirdly, this feels like an older style, but I wish that it wasn't. But that's how you get, sorry, just to agree with you again, just that's how you get a movie like this that's a war of words to feel like an action film.
That's kind of, I think at the time this came out, this was viewed as like, oh, this is the new Simpson Bruckheimer joint and all the, all the stuff that goes with it. And yet watching it now with 30 years of hindsight, you're like, this is positively sedate, much more introspective, much more small scale. I was thinking about, I almost would have not preferred, but I would have liked to see the version of this where we don't even see the exterior. Like,
sure. Yeah.
We're only experiencing it the way the characters in the sub are.
Absolutely. And we just see blips on screens.
That's right.
That would really put you in their perspective.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I feel like there's something about seeing submarine, like there's no way to make the exterior of a submarine in the underwater exciting.
Right. It's weird because I don't disagree, but there is something about high tension, things need to happen quickly, but you're lumbering along that I feel like with a good filmmaker, you feel that you are white knuckling your seat a little bit because you're like, go, turn, dive, kind of a thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, I understand what you're saying. I mean, sometimes in the wider shots, it does just feel sort of, just like a potato hovering or something.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like a glorified bathtub or something,
Right. Who is it? The guy I wanted to call it. I think his name's Mark Christopher Lawrence, who plays one of the chefs we see like once or twice. I think he maybe has like one line, but he's, speaking of Terminator 2, he's one of the mental hospital guards.
Yeah, I remember him, yeah.
And he's in Fear of a Black Cat, which I really love.
Well, I feel compelled to point out the Superman connections.
Let's do it.
Well, obviously we have Lex Luthor over here, Captain
Yeah.
But also Cobb, who's played by actor George Zunza, who was the voice of Perry White in the 1990s Superman animated series.
Ah, nice.
Look at that. As my friend Michael Bailey says often, it all comes back to Superman.
By the way, I have to point out, when you were saying this being a little bit more present in the culture, I'll never forget Conan O'Brien, late night. And this would be early Conan O'Brien, if he started in 93 and this is 95.
Yeah.
And I think he was showing clips from films.
Okay.
And just saying like, did you notice this was kind of weird in Crimson Tide? And so it's when Hackman and Washington are having their sort of shouting match, and Hackman keeps yelling to Cobb. He's like, Cobb!
Oh, I remember.
And then Conan would cut then to a guy in a corner on the Cobb outfit with eyes and a mouth and a clipboard wearing like a naval uniform. And he's looking back and forth like, who do I listen to? And then, cut back to the real movie, and then like, Cobb, damn it. And then you see the corner on the Cobb guy throw his clipboard in the air like, I don't know what to do. what was that, 30 years? I've never forgotten that.
It's so Conan.
And then I have to say too, I watched some other submarine movie. I don't remember which one. And they said something like, hey, Cobb, get me this. And I was like, Cobb, what are the odds there'd be two guys named Cobb in submarine movies? Because I'm an idiot. Didn't realize that stands for Chief of the Boat. It's a title. So
it's like Weps.
Yeah, right. See, this conversation, like I said, I went into this sort of remembering that I ultimately sided with Washington. And so I thought Hackman was maybe just like a little off base the whole movie.
Right.
But in this moment, I was like, yeah, no, I kind of see why he did that drill here in a moment of chaos. And I like that. Yeah. I like that because then you can sort of go, well, they just have different styles. So then it throws you off a little bit later when they're against one another, and you can see why some people would remain loyal to this person and other people would go, well, actually, I feel like I should be loyal to this guy. Like they're not out and out. They're not, this guy's good, this guy's bad. Just different. That's
really what it comes down to, right? It's modeling different styles of leadership, and it's almost like
yes.
what does one respond to better, right? And Hackman has sort of by the way, this feels very like, oh, let's make sure we get some shots of Denzel all sweaty and muscular.
Yeah. Well, I heard he's been lifting some weights, getting in shape for this job. Like boxing scene, like. I mean, I would insist upon it if I had those arms.
I think he's 40 in this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
By the way, just on that note, I just read Rolling Stone did an oral history of What About Bob, which is surprisingly riveting.
Wow. Okay.
So much tension on the set. And Richard Dreyfuss was 43 in that movie. He's younger than us.
Wow. What?
Yeah. I would have been like, I don't know, like 52, 3.
Yeah, that's what I would have said. Yeah. Oh, no.
Nope. Shave off 10 years, my friend.
Good Lord. No, but in terms of like styles of leadership, right? And,
yes.
and it comes down to, are you an empathetic leader or a, not dictatorial, that's the wrong word, but somebody who says, I'm the leader, therefore you listen to me.
Yeah. And he even says like, put my foot up your ass. Like he's a foot up your ass guy, like.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it comes down to. It's I'm the leader and therefore you listen to me, or I'm the leader and therefore I listen to you. Right. Which is it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so you're seeing those philosophies bump up against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, the dilemma is such that, well, we instinctively know, well, World War III is not going to break out during this movie.
Sure.
This is not Terminator 3, you know?
Right.
So reflexively, we're already on Hunter's side.
Right.
But I think what it comes down to is Ramsey, based on the information he has, it has to represent a position that you as the audience are like, well, what would I do in this situation?
Because they do call out multiple times what protocol dictates.
That's right.
And he's like, this is incomplete, therefore it does not count. So we have to go with the previous. Like, that's the way this goes by the book.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, you know, like, this is why I'm not cut out for military, you know, like maybe he's not wrong.
But
you know,
this is the interesting thing. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, please.
But like, Hunter is the one who does everything by the book. But he is not given the presumption of correctness.
Right.
And again, I would offer it's because his race is used as a like, well, he didn't get here you know, under his own steam, or, you know, all this stuff. Like, you got to work twice as hard.
Sure. Yeah.
To be treated half as respectfully. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And again, I'm not saying the Ramsey character is racist.
Right.
I'm saying that there's sort of you know, there's a systemic racism at play.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense. Sorry.
No, it absolutely does. Yeah. I mean, I think that's certainly in the text of the film.
Yeah.
It just, they don't bang you over the head with it.
Right. But I think when you cast any black actor, but obviously you cast somebody like Denzel Washington, you can't help but read that in. And I think it makes it a richer experience, is kind of my point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, 100%. Yeah, just, I don't know. I won't do this the whole way, but like, just even that scene stood out to me watching it earlier. Just the blocking, you know, such intentionality with the blocking that adds tension. You know, I mean, I don't know. Okay, so here we go. Yeah.
So this right here. So you're telling me that these two, at least that guy, the big muscle bound guy, he's arguing about his favorite Silver Surfer comic book.
Well, I'm willing to buy like a shouting match, but them like rolling around punching each other like does feel like a bit much for,
like, I can roll with it if Danny Nucci is a comic book dork and that guy's like, hey, you reading comic books, dork? That would make more.
Right.
I think it's funny, it's amusing, and everybody remembers the Silver Surfer exchange.
Yeah.
But I would say, as a comic book dork, you know, like Mobius, he drew the Surfer like once or twice. Give me a break. What you should have done was talk about Jack Kirby's Silver Surfer versus John Buscema's Silver Surfer. And then we can have a conversation. I'm just saying, Quentin.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I remember this from the first time I watched it, where he gets a little bit of a dressing down, but then Hunter's agrees with him about the Silver Surfer, and you're like, oh, he's cool. You know? By the way, this reminded me seeing the dog pee here. Like, well, I guess where else would it pee?
Right, that's
but
true.
B, sometimes when I write, I like to write at shopping malls, just because there's, I don't know, so much atmosphere and people watching.
And you pee in the corner to get the juices flowing?
No, yeah, mark my territory, so I can go step away to get a coffee. But no, but I was sitting at this little table by an escalator, and a guy came up with his dog, and there was a potted plant, and the guy let his dog pee on the pot in the mall.
Wow.
And he had no shame about it. Like, it was almost like he was proud of it. And people walked by and kind of chuckled, and he's like, yeah. And I was like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah,
like,
it did that. That's where that shit goes, right there.
I just thought that was so strange. I'm like, just step outside, dude.
That's pretty weird.
Yeah, that's gross.
And that's why people don't go to malls anymore.
Yeah,
It's because of that guy specifically.
yeah. You know, you get so much dynamic lighting just inherently through this set too, like all
Mhm.
the through the grills and the you know mesh metal
Yeah.
walkways and stuff. And it's just actually I was going to point that out earlier when they had the meeting before they were called off, when they're like at the very beginning of the movie, and they're addressing the men. They're in this office, but there's a skylight and it's raining, so you get this crazy watery flickering light just being draped in the background, which inherently makes the shot 10 times more interesting.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I'm trying.
Like,
I'm
look at
like
this
one of those
shot.
people.
Look at that shot right there with Viggo Mortensen, where he's lit in red. He's against this blue background.
Yep.
I mean, that's like, it's like a painting. You know, you could frame that and put it on the wall. You know.
Exactly. And I'm sort of like one of those people who's trying to figure out what the magic drink is, the secret ingredients. Where I go in, I take the drink, and then I put it into a suitcase and take it to a lab and distill down what the ingredients are so I can solve it. Like that's what I'm trying to do here with Tony Scott, figure out what makes him so.
I mean,
good.
look at the lighting here, where you've got half of their faces are lit in blue, right there.
Yep.
The right side is blue, left side is green. It's a beautiful shot. You know.
Beautiful. It's striking. It draws you in. Yep. You know what I love too, by the way, though? This is something, so many movies do this, but when people are looking at display screens like this, actually, this just happened in Batman and Robin. Oh, we were talking about that on
different podcast.
Different podcast. Fun episode, though. Check it out. But like when computer displays are like projected on the people's faces, you know, because
like in Jurassic Park, also, remember?
Yeah, well, like literally the text. It's not just, it's funny because in this movie, sometimes it's just a green light like we're seeing here, but sometimes we'll literally see the numbers, the letters projected back onto their face, which is just a funny thing that makes absolutely no sense. But it adds this like tension, you know, seeing that on these people's faces. Yeah. In Jurassic Park, it's on the dinosaur, isn't it? All the like DNA code. It breaks into that computer room and it's being, which is cool symbolism because it's sort of like, this is what you are made up of. Spielberg. But this is another thing I didn't understand actually, because they have these emergency action messages and they have to authenticate. But I'm like, how do they're not saying which plastic thing they pull out of the safe.
Honestly, I was trying to follow the internal, however it works,
because it looks like there's only 3 or 4 of them in there. Right?
Yes. So what happens when you run out?
See, this feels like that. I don't remember what it's called, but it's like that app, you know, the Google app or whatever, where you get the code that changes every 15 seconds. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, yeah, like authenticators. Right?
Authenticator, yeah. And so it feels like that's something you can imagine now on a submarine. You probably still want to keep it analog, to your point. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, yes, you're right. But you can imagine something like that feels, you know, there's an infinite amount of possibilities you could come up with.
Yeah, like I don't understand the inner workings of how this authentication stuff goes.
Right.
But it is one of those things where it's like when you watch a medical procedural and people are like, "Oh, give me the flim flam and the zip zap," and you're like, okay,
I believe you. You're confident about it, which makes me confident. About
exactly.
It. Yeah. Do you ever, by the way, freeze up when you're on the phone with someone and you need like a, I don't know, someone who's helping you out from a bank or something, and you're supposed to give your email, and so then you have to give this sort of like Bravo, Tango, whatever. But I never think of those words, so it'll be like B as in but, you know, H as in Anne Hathaway, A as in I don't know. It's just my name, you know.
I've got it down to pretty well. I know what letters I use.
Yeah.
Or what words. So, you know, I pretty much got it. But I remember one, I was like, I worked at Montgomery Ward and I had to call in a credit card and her name was like Nicole or something like that. And I was like, N as in noodle. And I remember the lady who I was calling on behalf of kind of gave me this look, and she mouthed the word noodle. I was like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, there's certain ones. I mean, B, Bravo. It's like we hear that so much in films, but like there are certain letters where you don't hear them as often. So it's like I don't know.
See, I think if I could have been like N as in nitwit, I as in idiot, C as in crap shack.
Crap shack. Yeah. Yeah. By the way, great canted angle in this movie.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like we were watching Batman and Robin, and I was like, you know.
Well, you're comparing this to Batman and Robin.
Well, it's on my brain, but like, but this is it's good. It throws you off balance. You know, I mean.
Well, I think that's what it comes down to is how do you take what is ultimately a relatively sedate thriller and turn it into, kind of a steroidal, give it the trappings of an action movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Tony Scott's an interesting dude in this regard because like I think he would get unmoored occasionally. Like I think, and I was not a big fan of Domino, for example,
Yeah, for sure. He dialed the style up to 11.
Yes.
In the sort of early 2000s, which sometimes it was right on the edge for me, Man on Fire or something like that. But like to your point, Domino was just like a straight up acid trip.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was like late 2000s, I think, right?
That was because I actually saw them shooting that movie.
Oh, wow.
That was 2000. I want to say 5 or 4
so
or 5.
Mid 2000s. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I really like what he does here. I think I've said to you before, I love Spy Game.
Yeah, I'd like to rewatch that.
Hey, let's come back next year and do that. It's the 25th anniversary.
Operation Dinner Out. That's the only thing I remember about it.
There you go.
Yeah, but I remember really liking it.
Yeah, and I think that's another movie like this one. It's elevated by Scott's stylistic approach.
Mm-hmm. That's another one too. I mean, yeah, I think it was well regarded. We liked it, but you just don't see it.
Yeah, well, that one got sort of post 9/11. It got sort of I think people were not in the mood for like political thrillers.
Sure. Yeah, Vigo's getting a lot of blue and red, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it looks cool. Wonder if you were to put on 3D glasses, if he'd be like, "Whoa!"
Speaking of acid trip,
Yeah. This is kind of a funny thing. Philippi with his fish tank.
Yeah,
that's
all he gets to do in this movie.
Yeah, like it adds, character and touches to the surroundings, but at the same time, it seems really impractical.
Well, one presumes they have those on subs, though, right? I mean,
they must. I mean, that's that. I would really like to. Have you ever been on a sub? I mean, there was the one in one of the Chicago museums.
I've been on that one.
Yeah,
the one at the Museum of Science and Industry.
Yeah,
and that's a German U-boat. But it's freaking bananas, man. Because I got claustrophobic just imagining being in that scenario. And modern subs are substantially more spacious than that.
Sure.
But even still, it's a hard no from me.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, there's something. People say they kind of have a fear of being untethered in space. You lose your tether and you float away forever. That is terrifying. But for me, it's being beneath the water.
That's right.
Like in a can with all this pressure around you. That's frightening to me. Now, who Cobb? What else has he been in? I know you said the Superman thing. He's so familiar.
Yeah, well, he's been in a bunch of stuff. He's retired now, but he was in the first season of original Law and Order. He was the senior detective. He was paired with Chris Noth during the first season of Law and Order. But he's been in a ton of stuff. He's in Basic Instinct, which you might know him from.
Oh, you know what? I think that's what I'm thinking of. Michael Douglas's friend.
That's right.
He wears the cowboy hat. Yeah. Deer Hunter, Dangerous Minds.
Yeah. He had a great career as a character actor. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. But isn't this just like a delicious setup, by the way? Like the elevator pitch.
Yep.
You know, it's like we're on the brink of nuclear war. A submarine is too low and it gets half a transmission, and they don't know if they should fire or not. Like that's just like you buy that on the spot.
Right.
It is kind of interesting, like that he's having to not fight for this, Hunter, but like, well, shouldn't we figure out what the rest of this says? I mean, I realize there's a lot going on where they're trying to hide from the sub in the moment, but Hackman, it's almost like, fine. Like, aren't you curious what this says?
Well, I think, this is where, the film sets up this dynamic where Hunter is the academic. Right. And Ramsey is he's the old salt. He's the guy who can, he can just smell the air and know which direction the wind is coming from or whatever, like all this stuff.
Right.
He can touch the floor plate and know, how fast it's going, all that stuff,
Yeah.
And so, people who are so entrenched in that, they tend to trust their instincts to a fault.
Yes.
And at some point, instinct isn't enough.
And that's what I love about this movie, and what makes it feel more intelligent to me is he isn't horny for war.
No, right.
You know what I mean? Like, he's not licking his lips. Like,
that's right. Oh, we're gonna get those commie bastards or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They could have done that version, and they didn't.
Exactly. Like he has those instincts, like you said, but like he's just doing his job by his mind. You know what I mean? Like, he's not thirsty for it, which I like, because I can picture that version too.
Well, and the great thing is like, the only reason Hunter's on the boat right now is because his usual XO had appendicitis or whatever. I'm like, if that bro had been on the boat, we would have had nuclear war.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep. But yeah, I gotta say, I mean, with this sub action, I agree with you. It'd be really interesting, and maybe if I was making this movie, it'd be interesting to test a version where you do not see the exterior of the ship ever.
Yeah.
And you just see shots like this of the men looking around, like having no clue what's going on outside, and just having radar technician people being like, okay, well, we've got this thing heading here, bearing in, 1,000 feet, 500 feet, but like that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, I do think, for, like we say, the lumbering potato-ness of these vessels, like it has incredible tension.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I look at this stuff and I'm just like, man was not meant to be that deep.
No.
You are violating God's law.
I was listening to something else, and they were talking about the bends.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're like, who was the poor unfortunate soul who first discovered that?
Right.
Like,
I mean, yeah.
For the first time, we went a certain depth in the water and realized that man needed to depressurize. Like,
right. Yeah. Somebody figured that out.
Yep.
Probably didn't live to pass on the warning verbally.
Exactly. By the way, that explosion looked very cool.
It did, yeah.
Sometimes you watch films like this and it's like the effects haven't aged great. Like, I don't know, Batman and Robin. But actually, I think this stuff looks really good.
Well, it helps. It's models and it's relatively small scale.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of, it doesn't need to be, there's no blue sky beams in this, or blue ice beams, as the case may be.
Right.
People listening be like, what's up with you and Batman and Robin?
Yeah.
Jesus, we get it. Okay.
I know. Poor editor of Batman and Robin is listening. Like, look, man, I have a long drive today. I enjoyed Crimson Tide. I just wanted to listen to you guys chat a bit.
Cancels his Patreon for some reason.
I know.
See, I like how the Matt Craven character, like, you kind of think he's like he doesn't seem like the type who would end up, betraying Hunter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's seen, and that's what I kind of love is like the sort of chess match dynamics at play. You don't really know who would end up on who's, well, except for Gandolfini. He's pretty much,
Yeah.
I think from the moment the movie starts, you're like, yeah, he's not gonna be a fan. I think I know. Not a lot of gray shades there,
Right. Whatever's team jerk, he's on.
Yeah.
He's crossing the line over there into that area. Yeah. But that's what's great too, is you can insert yourself into this.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, look, if I'm just some like grunt on this ship,
Yeah.
and Hunter's coming to me like, get a sidearm, like
Right.
we attack at midnight. Like inside, deep down, I may believe he's right, but what would I actually do in that situation?
That's right.
At the end of the day, where nothing may happen, and I'm going to be, judged for this.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And at the same time, I may be judged for this. Like if it really means potentially billions of lives. Like sometimes, do I break command because I believe there's a shadow of a doubt for the right thing here?
Yeah. Man, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
See, I think obviously right here, one of the great moments of this whole movie, right? Like you're seeing these are two men talking calmly to each other.
Yes.
And yet you can cut the tension with a knife.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I love that line too, where he's like, an incomplete order is no order at all.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, shit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I love the thing about redundancy where he's explaining redundancy to Ramsey.
Yeah.
Ramsey's like, I know what redundancy is, but we in the audience are like, but we didn't, so thank you.
I literally thought that. I was like, that's for the audience. And they did that about as well as they could there. And I mean that as a compliment, Yeah.
Pretty brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they do that a couple times here. They do a good job of sort of like nudging us in the ribs and be like, well, that means this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's pretty good. I love, by the way, speaking of blocking, look at this, where he's got the high ground here.
I know.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, this right here, where as things escalate, and then Ramsey's like, no, shut the F up, right? And you think about, like, that's where things come to a head, right?
Yes.
Because it's just in life, right? You never call somebody out or diminish them loudly in front of other people.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is going to force a digging in.
Mm-hmm.
And so you wonder, like, if Ramsey would have taken Hunter aside and they could continue, maybe they don't reach a resolution.
Mm-hmm.
But things escalate from there, right? Like this scene right here.
This is the turning point for sure.
Right.
Yep.
There's the guy in the corn cob suit.
Right, yes, Cobb. Yep. I looked that up. I found it on YouTube. I had to watch it again.
Oh, you're gonna have to send that to me.
Yeah. Cobb, arrest this man.
Man, what a Denzel! This is like quintessential Denzel, right?
So good. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, him too, right? At this moment, this movie arrived at kind of a great time for his career, because he was just gradually building up. He'd won an Oscar for Glory, right? He'd been nominated for Malcolm X, and he was known as like a respected actor. But this was like blockbuster Denzel,
Yeah, but still getting to do his elevated thing.
Yeah,
you know I mean?
well,
like he's not just running around with a gun sweating.
Well, this is the thing, right? I think that his presence and Hackman's presence, they elevate this movie
totally,
right? And one can see how the following year with The Rock, like you said, Nicolas Cage. Well, Nicolas Cage elevated The Rock because that wasn't the type of movie back. People may not realize Nicolas Cage didn't used to do action movies,
right.
So him being in one was somewhat novel.
Yep.
I mean, things escalate so quickly here.
Yes, yes. And going back to the blocking, I mean, just when they were yelling at each other, but Hackman's looking in one direction, Denzel's looking up at him, Denzel's low, Hackman's high. Like, it's just the intentionality of it. It's not an accident, and it
Right.
really, in a static frame, is just like pulsating.
Yep.
So good. I mean, even that, it's such a simple shot, but it feels like it's trembling.
Mm-hmm.
I seriously want to study it. It's incredible. Speaking of when you say these two elevated it, and speaking of Brad Pitt, I read that one of the earlier incarnations was going to have Brad Pitt, I think, as Hunter, and Al Pacino as Ramsey.
Okay.
And Pitt wanted to do it to work with Pacino. Then for some reason Pacino was out, so Brad Pitt dropped out.
Yeah,
I mean, I can see it.
I can imagine that, but I'm glad that's not the one that got made.
Same. I mean, Pacino does what he does very well, but I think Hackman just brings something maybe a little bit more that feels a little bit more in control.
Right.
Even when he's frazzled and upset, and obviously Denzel brings a steadiness.
That's right.
That is really, I mean, incomparable, really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. I can imagine, and you can sort of see the Mad TV parody version with Al Pacino being like, "Oh,
yeah.
I gotta tell you,
Exactly.
I don't know.
They are fueling their missiles right now." And then Brad Pitt's like, whoa, yeah.
Bow.
Yeah, exactly.
I like how Vigo is kind of in the middle.
Yes.
I think he ends up being sort of the conscience of the piece.
Yes.
In terms, well, I mean, I guess Denzel is actually the conscience of the piece.
Sure. But yes.
But Vigo's character is the one. I think he's most reflective of us. We're kind of like,
yes.
Going back.
Maybe that's why I'm reacting so strongly, because I feel like he's who I would be.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, well, so at some point he's trying to, from his point of view, speak reason to Hunter. But at the end, when he's even got a gun to his head, he goes with his conscience.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Great character. I thought about that guy. They have the security outside of Ramsey as he's locked up, and the guy's like, "I don't know about you, but I'm pissing my pants." And I just thought about that guy, the one line he gets in the movie, and all his friends and family showing up for the screening, and he gets that one moment blocking up Gene Hackman. "I don't know about you, but I'm pissing my pants."
That's a good line, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I was just like, "Hey, yeah, good for that guy."
That's true, right? Everybody gets the one line. It's like in the movie No Holds Barred.
I think I know what line you're going to say.
Where Hulk Hogan is beating up this guy, and he goes, "What's that smell?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Dookie."
Yes.
And I'm like, that guy, all of his friends and family showed up just to see him shit himself.
Yeah. And he's like, "Believe it or not, that was the first take." I don't know. It just came out of me.
I have to be honest, when we started this commentary track, I didn't realize the sentence, "It's like in the movie No Holds Barred, ... would escape my lips," but here we are.
Yeah, if we could bring it back to Batman and Robin. But no, I like this moment too with Denzel thanking Cobb.
Yeah, that's great.
Like,
I love that.
Thank you. This is, I don't know. I like it. There's nothing personal about it. Or everyone has their internal logic about everything as it's unfolding a mile a minute here, and the world is at stake.
But here's the interesting thing, and you can't help but sort of just apply it given the world we're in right now, where it just feels like laws don't mean anything anymore. It's like the rules are the rules, and the rules allow a sense of order where you say, "Look, I don't like you, but you did it by the book, therefore," right?
Which is what that's his point, or his perspective.
Right?
I did what I did because it's by the book.
And in other words, that's what we follow.
Yes.
And you realize how when we sort of throw over a rules-based order, that's when chaos comes in.
Mm.
And even like at the end of the film, or near the end, when Hackman ultimately concedes, why? He realized he was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff matters,
Yep. Yep.
I love this sequence here where we get right into this combat situation as a way right away. Hunter
Yes.
now has to prove that he's up to this.
Yep.
And
Totally.
the pressure is so much greater now that he has essentially locked up the captain. Not essentially, actually locked up the captain.
Yep. Yep. I was thinking that. It's good to see. I mean, we talk about sort of like he's a man of the people type leader. He wants people's respect and to show that he's giving respect and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But now we need to see him uncompromising, thinking, in split second decisions, and he does it.
He does.
This is a moment where they explain something to the audience, right? Where he's like, has them try to get away a certain distance, and the guy's like, I don't remember what he says, something like, why? And the guy's like, well, because if it's a certain distance, they don't have time to arm you, idiot.
Everybody got that?
Yeah, but I'm like, thanks for asking the question because I didn't know that. Yeah. Or that's it. He's getting closer, right? Because they won't have time to arm. Yeah. That guy's voice, though. What's the actor's name?
Danny Nucci.
Danny Nucci. His voice is just so suited for this.
Oh, totally.
To be screaming this stuff and like make it really compelling to listen to.
Well, he's in this in 1995. 1996, he goes under the water to emerge in the Alcatraz. And then in 1997, he is crushed by a big old thing on the Titanic.
That's, you know what? As soon as you say it, I'm like, of course. I go to America.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've said this before. He's married to Paula Marshall, who she was the love interest in the Flash TV pilot that we watched. Remember?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and she was on like Seinfeld, a bunch of stuff. Anyway, Yeah, it's crazy. I looked at a picture of him now, Danny Nucci. He's got like his hair is all gray and he's got a beard. And I'm like, holy shit!
It's funny you say that. You're like reading my mind. I was thinking if I were to pass him on the street, would I recognize him? I'm like, well, he's not a kid anymore, Brian. Like this was 30 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like Isai Morales, in Dead Reckoning.
Oh, funny.
Huh. Another submarine movie, by the way.
Yeah, that's true, huh? And we're gonna get another one. I mean, doesn't he have to like get the thing out of the thing?
That's
more submarine action.
That's the plot of every Mission Impossible. He's got to get the thing out of the thing.
Yeah.
At some point, Ethan Hunt has to get the thing out of the thing. Can you write a script to make that happen, please?
I was just gonna say that's my pitch to Paramount for the next Mission Impossible. Well, I imagine he's got to get a thing out of a thing.
He's probably gonna fall at some point of a different thing while trying to get to aforementioned thing.
Yeah. But then all you have to do is be like, yeah, but but he's also like climbing a rope that's dangling off the back of a motorboat, and it's really Tom Cruise. So, sold.
Sold.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop drilling. You've hit oil.
I just took a drink of water. Shouldn't have done that. I like the little affectations they give here also with him having a dog. So for his like, this guy who seems like he gargles nails, Hackman here, like he's like, but he's got this, it's not like some big dog. He's got this little dog.
Little cute dog.
Makes him interesting. I like that. He's a man of contrast.
Yeah, Viggo Mortensen, he was on the Rich Eisen show a couple of years ago. And Rich Eisen asked him, like, oh, do you have any great Gene Hackman stories? Mm-hmm. And he's like, this was like, for me, it was like one of my first big movies, and I wasn't one of the main people. So, but I would just show up every day I wanted to see these guys working. And he's like, Gene Hackman was on set all the time. He's like, he wouldn't go hang out in his trailer. He would just be on set. He'd be talking to the director. He'd be talking to the actors. He'd be hanging out, playing with the dog. And he was just always there. And I was like, man, how interesting to be so invested even at that stage of your career. Mm-hmm. Because Gene Hackman's one of these guys who you could imagine he could just hang out in his trailer, his dressing room, and then they call him to set. They call action. He does his thing, knocks it out.
Yep.
And then goes and chills out again.
Don't you love that? Like love of the game,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love that. Especially you hear that sometimes with actors like that, who you feel like Hackman, where you feel like he always plays such hard people.
Mm-hmm.
And like you feel like you'd almost be scared of him in real life. And I
Yeah.
don't know what he was like in real life, but it's like, well, he's a freaking actor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's what he plays.
Although Vigo said he was crusty. That was the quote that he used.
I can picture that. I can
Right.
picture that.
And he's like he didn't suffer fools.
Well, I believe that, but at the same time, like he is an artist.
That's right.
And it's interesting when you see these tough guy people who still have the artist component to them.
Yeah.
You know, the love of the craft, and they speak in those sorts of terms sometimes, which are unexpected coming out of their mouths, but it's like,
right.
no, they love it. They like to create, you know, and it's,
yeah, well, and Vigo talked about how, like, for him as a young actor, that was really something inspiring in terms of how to be on a set, you know.
Mhm.
And I always loved that, where it's like, you know, this veteran actor showed me how to act.
Totally.
Not in terms of performing, but just how to be when I'm on a film set.
Right. Don't totally.
Yeah.
By the way, so after this action sequence, well, Rick Schroeder, by the way,
Rick Schroeder, right? Like, it's like, that's weird. He just kind of shows up.
Yeah, you know, it's like when Anthony Michael Hall was popping up again. You know, we kind of mostly knew him as a kid in the 80s, and then all of a sudden he's kind of having these roles, like he's in The Dark Knight, for example. And
see, I mostly know Rick Schroeder as guy yelling at Costco workers because they want him to wear a mask.
Oh, is that no? Really?
Yeah, that's true. He's like, "You're a fascist," or whatever. Ricky.
Rick. Well, I was gonna say, it's like this could have been that moment where he's sort of like, oh, well, he's a man now, and then he gets bigger and bigger roles. But
well, because right around a couple of years after this, he was on NYPD Blue for a couple of years. He replaced.
Okay,
Jimmy
see, that's
Smith.
off my radar. Yeah.
He replaced Jimmy Smits. See right there,
How
Steve,
is he?
that was Steve Zahn, right? Who gets clobbered.
Yeah. But this is like a really harrowing thing that's just kind of tucked away in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have that, I don't mean to, call it trope, but it is, where it's just like the whole thing is going to go down if we don't seal off this portion.
Yeah.
But there are people behind that portion. What do you do?
Yeah.
Like that is always so compelling and heartbreaking.
I mean, there is no good decision that Hunter can make, right? And yet, as a test of his character, he has to consign at least one person to death. You know?
Yes. Yeah, it's terrible.
Oh, you were asking about how Rick Schroeder was on NYPD Blue?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was not Jimmy Smits, I think is the problem.
Sure.
He only lasted like 2 seasons on that show, and then he was replaced by Mark Paul Gosselaar.
Who interesting.
Was
another
actually
blonde 80s.
Although, he had black hair. I think by then he was in his Dead Man on Campus phase.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I guess he is naturally. I was reading some interview with him recently.
Yes, that's right.
He had to dye my hair every 2 weeks.
Yeah, but he was quite good at NYPD Blue anyway.
Good for him. But I was going to say, this whole thing with any bit of warfare. They even survived the warfare here, but now they are under threat of flooding. Yep. I mean, just how terrifying, like, and now there are people, it's their job to like take wrenches to bolts and make sure that this whole thing doesn't go under.
Yeah. I look at when you're in a flooded situation and you're trying to use a wrench to tighten something.
I had that thought too.
Right. I'm like that. I'm like in the bottom 5 of things I want to be doing in the last few minutes of my life. Probably that.
Yeah. Exactly. Agreed. I do love all this lighting business. We have all these emergency alarms going off, but it really adds like a dimensionality to everything in the frame. Like we're seeing the lights flare. We're seeing them bounce off of things in the background and the foreground. I always love that.
Yeah. And it doesn't just happen is the other thing. Tony Scott had to block this stuff in such a way where it had a clear sense of how he wanted it to look, Yep.
And that's the thing. I don't bring it up as much as I used to on this podcast, but when they would smoke out a room, and kind of add this atmosphere and make sure that there is sort of a depth that you can perceive in there versus now, Yeah, sometimes people still do it, but like not as often, and so things feel a little flatter.
Yeah,
and maybe a little more TV like.
that's right. Yeah,
But this feels a little more. I mean, even just looking down this hallway with all those lights going
you
off,
see
the
some depth
smoked
to
out
it.
background. Yeah, there's a real dimensionality to it, which is great.
By the way, the actor, the guy who does not step aside, that's James Ledger. He's another one of those hey that guy actors. He was on the TV show Las Vegas with James Caan, and he was they did a new TV version of Uncle Buck a couple years ago.
Yeah. Oh yes.
With who was in that? Well, he was in it, but he was like the dad. He was not Uncle Buck. I forget who played Uncle Buck.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember either.
But a lot of hey that guys, man. I'm Rocky Carroll, who plays the black crewman who ends up siding with Ramsey, right? I mean, he's from NCIS and a million other things,
Yeah. Las Vegas, that takes me back. I also saw that being filmed. That was their stage used to be across from one of the things I worked on, so I'd always see
kidding.
Josh Duhamel outside.
Josh Duhamel
hanging out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy because that show seems recent to me.
Yeah, sure.
And you're like, no, that's like more than 20 years ago.
Wow. And the thing that I remember about it is Laura Flynn Boyle's character being killed off, where she was like standing on a rooftop and basically she's wearing a flowy dress and a gust of wind comes and blows her away.
Really?
You ever seen that? Yeah.
No.
Look it up on YouTube. It's hilarious.
That's like on LA Law when they killed off Diana Muldaur's character. They just had her fall down like she hit the elevator button, the door opened, and she just fell down the shaft.
Oh, jeez.
It's like they couldn't figure out what to do with their character.
Right. Talk about getting the shaft.
Yeah, right. Hey, there you go. That's good.
Yeah, but I like this. So much tension. Jeez.
Like if I'm Weps in this situation, what do I do, right?
Uh-huh.
I think I'd just curl up in the fetal position in the corner.
Be like, why didn't I join the Air Force?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be like, la, 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 la. I'd be just doing that for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, just hiding out somewhere. That's why. Thank God we didn't enlist.
Yeah,
I do notice that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it. I don't think it would have gone well. That's all.
And I think this is very well done, but this is like a moment for the script to remind us of the stakes. Like, don't you, lest you forget, they're refueling right now, preparing their weapons, and if we don't do this, and this is really good stuff for us.
Well, that's in my speech classes, I talk about persuasion. One of the tools of persuasion is sort of the idea of like a ticking clock. Time is running out. You don't have time. You have to trust me.
Mm-hmm.
And if the stakes are like world ending such as this, then that you have to trust me can be pretty darn compelling.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Again, Ramsey's not just some guy, right? I mean, the movie does take pains to show that he is a fully rounded person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the benefit of his lived experience versus Hunter's more clinical academic take.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Where are we? So we have 36 minutes left in this movie, and this is where they're splitting off.
Right.
But that's what I think of with this movie is the division.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. By the way, did you read that this apparently is partially inspired by a real life incident?
Yeah, with the Russians though.
Yes, exactly. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, I guess some Soviet sub was near like a naval blockade, submerged. So they were out of contact, got, incomplete message. I mean, that's kind of scary to think about, isn't it?
It really is, right?
Yeah. I'm like reading it right now. It says they've been out of contact for several days with Moscow at the depth that they were running. When U.S. destroyers dropped signal depth charges to force the sub to surface, the Soviet captain believed war had broken out between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. His sentiments were concurred by an onboard political officer. However, the second in command refused. All three needed to agree before launching. Being out of contact for so long with no clear orders, the captain was convinced to surface and found they'd been surrounded by U.S. destroyers. Communication was reestablished with Moscow, and they received orders to return home, thereby averting nuclear war. Jeez.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
I think this is, I mean, what you realize is these are circumstances that ultimately turned on people with the ability to think things through to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, but the human element in particular, you know, not algorithms, just people.
Well, and there's also something interesting about being in the position where you are to receive orders.
Right.
Like, we don't pay you to think, we pay you to carry out our orders.
Right.
You know, but you are a human being.
Yeah.
And that would be difficult. That would be difficult.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, it's like we were just talking about Outbreak a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah,
And,
right.
And that, you know, the third act hinges on, oh, you are being ordered to vaporize this town.
Right.
And you as the person tasked with doing that have to make a decision about how you want history to remember you.
Right.
Like, you will be remembered in history, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like the conversation, the conversation earlier in the film about dropping the bomb on Hiroshima, you know?
Yes.
And that sense of, was it right or wrong? Like, I mean, it's complicated.
Yeah, and that's Denzel's answer is complicated, and he gets called out for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's right. You know?
Right. I know. And this is a good bit we talk about ticking clock, where it's like, fix the radio.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And this poor kid, like, it's a little nebulous exactly what's happening, but it's just like, they do a good job of fix the radio. You have 3 minutes.
That's right. Yeah.
To do the thing. And he's just like twisting knobs and soldering things. And it's like,
that's kind of, you have to create visual excitement in stuff that is not sort of intrinsically exciting, you know?
Yeah.
And if that means bringing in a Star Trek metaphor, then that's what we do.
Exactly. Yes. Which it has to be another Tarantino.
Right.
Flourish here, right?
Man, Denzel is such a dork in this movie, right? He's got the...
That's a good point.
He's got the...
Yeah, he's a real geek. That's great. Isn't that funny too, by the way, where that's like the norm? We kind of expect everyone to have a geeky side.
Yeah.
But that was like, oh, no kidding. You know, like this guy has a geeky side?
He's super geeky. He's super geeky.
Super geeky. Like, this is like that moment where, right? Like, I mean, we talk about this 1994 when Clerks had characters on screen going deep into Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that felt like a revelation.
Yep, that's right.
Right? And then it's just funny because then you get this little moment here, which is very Tarantino-y. And then, of course, you get Scream with the whole thing. They're just talking about other movies, right?
That's true.
And then, of course, that's the norm now.
Yep.
Like, it used to be, if you did a time travel movie, you wouldn't want to go, well, we're basically talking about Back to the Future, okay? Like, you know, you wouldn't do that because you almost would want to distance yourself, saying, like, we're not trying to do Back to the Future. But now it feels like you would have a movie just go, you saw Back to the Future, right? That's what we're doing. And that's suddenly became acceptable to do that.
By the way, look at this right here. The look he gives Rocky Carroll.
Yes.
He's like, bro, come on, man.
I know.
How are you going to do me like that, brother?
It's true. I mean, there really is like a racial component running through here that is unspoken. Most, largely. Yeah. Which is great. Gives it like, 12 layers, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
There's something so frightening too about the potential for nuclear war, and it's in the form of a key around your neck and then handing that key over to another person.
Right.
You know, like it's something so frightening about that.
You're divesting yourself of your ability to intervene in any way.
Yeah, but like the fate of the world is like
Mhm.
this thing on a lanyard,
Man.
you know?
Jeez.
I do love that moment too, by the way, where he, take him away, and then the guy reaches out to Denzel and he just slaps him,
Mhm.
or slaps
Yeah.
his hand.
But I love this too, where he just looks at, like, it's just,
Yes, at his friend.
it's just the look, you know?
E2 Brute.
Yeah, I mean, right, you know?
Yep.
But just that, right? Like, you're able to convey so much with a look, you know? And I think Denzel, especially throughout this movie, right? He's able to convey so much through just stoicism.
Mm-hmm.
Wish I could give stoic like Denzel.
But it's like you can imagine maybe there's a line in the script or something, because the impulse of a writer is to give like a cool line.
Uh-huh.
But like good directors, good actors, good writers, nope, take the red pen. He looks into his eyes, the eyes of his best friend, for like
Yep.
2 beats, then walks away.
Yeah,
Ugh, that's worse. That's more powerful. But yeah, Vigo's got a great, his character's got a great journey in this, because he's doing what this moment, if there is a protocol and the way things are unfolding, he's doing what he's got to do. But when push comes to shove, he does allow a gun to be put to his head to do the right thing, to pause for long enough.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. It's complicated. Oh, we should point out too that Ramsey Hackman's character here is wearing a red baseball cap and smoking cigars, which is basically Tony Scott's persona. I was wearing that ratty red hat and with a cigar in his mouth.
Well, specifically that hat Tony Scott would wear for the rest of his life.
This one specifically, the USS
the USS Alabama hat. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before, but especially, throughout history and whatever, cigars have been some sort of like power. You imagine like after dinner, the men are going to go retire to the smoking room. And smoke cigars.
Yeah, that's right.
But especially in the 90s, I remember it became this thing.
Yeah,
it was like,
really.
Right? Like Cigar Aficionado magazine, and all the actors, you'd see them smoking cigars. Schwarzenegger, of course, with a cigar. I
had a friend, his family opened a cigar store during the 90s.
And you could in that moment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It was such a thing in that moment. And I remember turning 18, I could smoke a cigar. And so it was like, well, of course we're going to smoke cigars. It was cigars had their moment.
They had their, like, even in comic books, I remember like, Wolverine would always be smoking a cigar.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was one comic, I still remember, it was Nick Fury. This is old white Nick Fury, right before Sam Jackson, and he's smoking a cigar, and he says, "Russian cigars taste like wet crap." And I remember that line.
That's so funny.
Like, why does a 12-year-old need to know that, right?
Right.
What I've heard about Russian cigars is they taste like wet crap. So
it's so funny. But it's funny because my friends and I were smoking like Swisher Sweets, which are basically like glorified cigarettes dipped in sugar water. But then I remember being at a wedding and someone had a real Cuban, and I was like, all right. And I felt so sick. I was like, this is, and I've never had one since. I was like, why? It's just not for me.
There you go. You got your little sitcom lesson episode. I love this, by the way. Look at this right here.
Yes.
How he describes the nuclear, again, not a war, a Holocaust,
Yep.
But the way, our birds are in the air, they see us, they send, and the way he frames that, it's great. It contextualizes perfectly.
Again, yeah. It makes sense in the moment, but it also is helpful for us.
Yeah.
Why they're doing what they're doing.
Why both sides are doing what they're doing. When you
exactly.
Think about it, right?
Like they both are painting images for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, and here we go. The payoff of them disagreeing.
Okay, Mobius. Yeah, I don't believe for 1 second that dude right there knows what Mobius is.
That's so funny. Yeah.
There was an episode of Small Wonder where Jamie was chewing tobacco. And so
okay, yeah, I can picture it.
And so I think Dad or somebody has him like keep chewing tobacco until he gets sick.
Yeah, right.
And so I was
Right.
like, why am I, this episode, I'm like, hey, there was a Small Wonder episode. I didn't think I'd be saying this conversation either.
Yeah, it's true. But that's kind of
anyway,
the old.
that was
Yeah.
you
Oh no, go ahead.
smoking
No, please.
that was you smoking your Cuban. You had your little Jamie Lawson moment.
Yeah. I like cigars. Cigars are fine. Cigars are for me. And then I tried like a real fatty cigar, and I was like, oh. I was like Pinocchio, you know.
Tiggers don't like cigars.
Yeah. Or like, you know, it would be on sitcoms also where it'd be like, all right, you like cigarettes? We'll smoke the whole pack. You
Yeah,
know, like,
right. Exactly. That trope.
yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, now things are getting real. There's something frightening too. I'm talking about it's scary being in this tin can with all this pressure around you, and you have a bunch of nuclear missiles strapped to your back.
Oh yeah, and that.
Yeah. See, I like this. I really love this friendship here. You know, the relationship here between Whips and
no, it's great.
Yeah. They're putting in, I mean, really, this is kind of an impossible situation. At the end of the day, I know maybe what I would choose, but this is sort of a almost like Kobayashi Maru sort of test, isn't it?
Yeah, right. No, I mean it's just we don't we as the audience have the benefit of, well, again, there's probably not going to be World War III, but if you're in it, you don't know.
Yep. And you're beneath,
yeah,
like all the beneath ocean. You can't look out your window. You can't really turn on a television. Turn on CNN, you know?
It's nuts, you know?
Yeah. Speaking of CNN, the guy at the beginning, you know, that bookends the movie.
Yeah.
It works. It works for me, but do you imagine that's some sort of like reshoot to like condense everything? Or do you feel like maybe that was just the way that they...
I didn't think about it. I mean, I can see that possibility, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, to your point, it just, to me, it just flowed very naturally.
Yeah. Versus text on screen. Tensions are high, you know.
Yeah, no, I think a CNN montage kind of does the job.
Mm-hmm. I like it. I think it's effective.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, this is great right here. You know, the whole, you know, Vigo's come to Jesus moment, I guess, you know.
Totally. And just staring at the safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are you gonna do? I mean, this isn't, again, you know, there is a relationship between him and Hunter and whatever, but putting all that aside, this is literally the fate of planet Earth. You know, and you have an order, but they might be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? This is amazing.
Pop quiz hot shot.
Yeah. Gene Hackman has a trigger aimed at your head.
What do you do?
What do you do?
What do you do? And I love that. He just takes a puff.
Me too. I love it. It made the whole cigarette thing worth it just for this moment to give him a little bit of, yep. Yep. You know, it's funny, when I was watching it earlier, I thought, oh, you know, I might have had him light the cigarette, like put the cigarette in his mouth and then light it. But then now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that would be too much. Maybe that would be too
on the nose.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I could have gone either way. You know,
same.
I would have expected him to light it.
Yes. Yeah.
But him taking the puff.
Yeah. Takes a little bit of the maybe possible over stylization out.
Jeez.
I know. You know, I had a feeling, by the way, when we got to this point of the movie, that I would just start watching it.
I would start watching it. it's so true.
Because this scene is so good. This I got to be honest. This is a scene I had kind of forgotten about.
Really?
Yeah, Vigo's scene.
See,
but this is great. Oh, sorry, good. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, this is just good plotting, because then you take him out of, you know, the deck or whatever it is, and then we have our, you know, Denzel and his faction crawling through the bowels of the ship to get to the
Right.
deck.
He
Left the key in. You know what I mean? Like this is really good plotting. You know, where we have everybody. You know.
See, I think it would have been funnier if it's like, oh, they took the key, and then it's like, okay, well, leave this key in, and then they go back to the bridge. Meanwhile, Denzel goes back, and we just do that about 3 more times.
Yeah. I can almost picture like the Wes Anderson version of that, where you then cut to the exact same framing of them, like, whoop, back to the bowels, like going through the bowels of the ship, you know, in reverse to like go get the key back, you know.
See, this here, I was thinking about. I was like, is this too far for Ramsey?
I think it is.
Right? Like, I think in terms of, is the character irretrievable after this?
You know, but I'm willing to buy this.
You
know, I hate it. And I actually was thinking, what a son of a bitch. Like, this poor guy, you know, being threatened to be shot in the face by his captain.
Right.
Like, it is too far. But I think I am willing to believe that he has been ramped up to this.
See,
personally,
my thought is, I think once he does that, which is freaking goddamn horrifying, and that poor guy is going to have PTSD for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
I don't think he deserves that salute at the end.
I don't disagree with that. And actually, I watched the Siskel and Ebert after this, as I am wont to do. And
oh, interesting.
Siskel says as much.
Oh, he does.
Oh. He disagrees with the salute at the end.
Yeah, I was conflicted about that, honestly.
Yeah. Although Denzel doesn't see that.
Yeah, but you're telling me Viggo Mortensen didn't let him know at some point? Yeah, by the way, bro is gonna like shoot Larry.
No, that's Larry.
Not Larry.
That's a good point, though. No, this is so good. Got the trigger. Oh, I'm just watching it with the sound off.
I know.
The trigger in his hand. Pull the key out. Fire. So good. Yeah.
All right, everybody back.
Yeah, exactly. It's Wes Anderson. Yes. Kind of want that version. But like, that's another thing that I think in movies a lot too, where someone has a gun pointed at someone's head, they pull the trigger and then click, there's no bullet.
Mm-hmm.
And so of course our hero gets an extra life or an extra chance. But then I always think, wow, you were willing to do it.
Yeah.
Like that guy was willing to do it. If it had gone the way he thought it was, you'd be dead. And in this moment, he pulled the trigger. Yeah. He was willing to set off a nuke. Like, damn, you know?
By the way, I have to mention, you know, the scene earlier when Weps, when he ultimately unlocks the safe, and the music that plays during that scene, I always think of the trailer for this movie that our group of friends worked on called Jerry's Angels.
Yeah, dude, I literally thought that. I went, oh, is that where Sean got it? I didn't know that. And I it's so funny you bring that up. Yeah. Because of course,
I was thinking of that because I'm so used to seeing that trailer, you know?
Yeah. So when we were making movies in the 90s, we would take our favorite scores and lay them over what we did. And yes, like what Zaki's talking about, there was one that we had, well, I wasn't in it, but Jerry's Angels, and it was Sean this music.
I wasn't in it either, actually. But yeah, it was Paul Shirey and Sean and various other hangers on.
Yep. But it's so funny, dude. The same thing went off in my brain.
See, this right there, right? It's like, I mean, he smacks him.
Yeah.
And he can't respond.
Yeah.
Right. And not just because of rank, but because of race.
Yeah.
He can't be the angry black man.
Yep.
Even though situationally it's entirely justified because what Ramsey's doing is so far beyond the pale.
Yeah. Well, and then this goes back to the salute. This happened.
Yeah. I was watching it last night. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't like that. I don't know that. Like, I think situationally I understand it.
Yeah.
Where given these characters and where they are at the end of this story. But it feels like the movie is trying to give Ramsey a redemption that at least his most recent actions here, like up to that thing with Weps, we're kind of like we can find a way to where he is.
Yeah.
But I think once you're pointing guns at people's heads and that stuff, it gets to the point where I'm like, no, I think you're ending up in more of a heel territory, you know?
I agree with that. Because you could even, I wouldn't want this line, but it could be something like, up into this point, you were doing by the book, you're doing your job, but you crossed the line and that I cannot abide. Like if they could do that with a Denzel stare versus that terrible line I just said. But this is great too. I was thinking, the balloon is expanding, and then we get this like great little moment of both of them sitting. Yeah, 3 minutes. Yeah, we're gonna give the comms
because it's like, look, no matter what, one of us is gonna be proven right, one of us is gonna be proven wrong.
Yep.
So just let the pieces fall where they will.
It's great. It gives us a little bit of exhale in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, of course, this is where we get the subtext becomes text.
That's right.
The racial stuff. And it really is.
He should have been real, like, and by the way, they're not white. They're black.
Right.
He should have really hit it hard and see if.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because being the movie, it's like I totally get it, and this is where it almost feels like almost too much in like evil for Hackman, where he's just like, oh, guess what? All those horses are white, son. It just feels a little like maybe like too like on the nose or something. I don't know. But then again, I mean, if that's who he is, then he's a piece of shit, and all is revealed, I guess.
Well, this is. I mean, I think that there is a certain degree of internalized racism.
I think so too. Yeah.
Right. And that's what's manifesting,
Yeah. I mean, he's 65 in 1995 here, so.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think
not to condemn all 65-year-olds, by the way. I mean, obviously.
No, but we get it.
Yeah.
Whereas like Gandolfini's character, you feel like he's just like one cut away from saying the N-word. That's
right.
That's Gandolfini's character,
Right.
He's more overtly. This is great though. This whole bit about the message coming through,
I know.
And I love that.
Was? Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Well, my thought was, I would take my iPhone out and I would video this and then freeze it so I could see what the message was as it's flickering. Right. But I was like, oh, they didn't have that.
Oh, wait a minute. This was 1995.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I like how they keep it from us until the very last second.
Oh, it's so amazing. They don't tell us. We just get to see it through their looks.
That's right.
Oh, it's amazing. Like Denzel, I mean, he doesn't even like go smug. He just goes relaxed and sort of like he doesn't even like at ease. You know what I'm saying? Like he gives this sort of like, okay, yep, kind of thing. And Hackman, you see him deflate in his way.
Well, I think it's the realization that I was right.
I almost set the world on fire.
Yeah,
incorrectly.
Yeah.
Look at that. Oh, that look from Denzel. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
I guess if there's one lesson to take away from this movie, looks.
Yeah. Well, from the right actors.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Trust Denzel to convey paragraphs in a look.
Yep. The pen is mightier than the sword. A look from Denzel is mightier than the pen.
And you know what's more dangerous than nuclear weapons? Words. That line always cracks me up in that movie.
Wait, what is that?
That's in the interview where
yeah, you said that earlier. Yeah. Sorry. It's funny because it's ringing a bell, but I already lost it.
It cracks me up because I screened that in my class and I bust out laughing every time. And I feel like my students don't get it because it's just another part. I'm like, that's really funny.
Yeah. How does that movie play through the years?
It's tough. It's tougher because I think that the geopolitical satire is really quite tight, and the media criticism is very effective. But I think they're sort of the James Franco of it all.
Yes.
That is kind of more of a problem now, you know?
Yeah, just things like satire feels a little bit less understood
Yes.
more and more. And
Yeah.
I just wonder how that goes over.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it leads to good conversation, so there's that.
Yeah. This is nice exit.
Yeah. Like you say though, I mean the smoke with the lighting around it really gives it something, it's a visual interest, you know?
Yeah. So Denzel went to work with Tony Scott many, many times. I mean, I think
This is the first of many.
Yeah, like 5, I want to say.
So there was this, there was Man on Fire, there was Deja Vu,
Pelham,
Taking Pelham on 23, and Unstoppable. Yeah, so 5 times, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's more actors than anyone else who worked with Tony Scott, right?
That's cool. They had a thing.
Well, and you see why. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of Deja Vu, admittedly, but Denzel Washington wasn't the problem. But like, I think both of them benefited from their pairings, you know?
Yeah, I think so.
Unstoppable, that's a fun one. That's feels like it's underseen, you know?
I should revisit that. I saw it the one time in the theater.
That was his last movie, wasn't it?
Was it?
It might have been.
That feels very possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this did pretty well. Well, it's funny, by the way. I saw something. What about Bob, by the way? So I was seeing, and it came out close to this, but that movie made something like $65 million or something. And I was like, oh, that seems kind of low. But then they adjusted for inflation. They were like, that's $150 million now.
Wow.
You're like, so like, yeah, $150 million for a comedy.
Yeah.
Pretty good. So this one here in the US, Crimson Tide made $91 million.
Okay.
Which is inflation quite a bit more, but worldwide about $160 million.
Well, and it costs like $50 million, right?
Yeah, 50. Isn't that amazing?
There's Jason Robards, by the way.
Yeah.
I kind of love that they throw him in just for this scene. It's like you need somebody who can intimidate Gene Hackman.
Yes, good point.
So you get Jason Robards.
Yep. So I saw this on IMDb. I think this is worth reading. It says the only previous film that has been about an American naval officer being relieved of his command by an executive officer was the Kane Mutiny. And it was Humphrey Bogart playing the captain. And Humphrey Bogart and Jason Robards had both been married to Lauren Bacall.
Wow.
So like this man was married to the same woman as Humphrey Bogart. Isn't that just
fascinating?
Yeah, isn't that kind of just a weird little factoid?
It really is. So the Kane Mutiny was previously made into a film with Bogart.
Yes.
I'm surprised I haven't seen that one.
You haven't either.
I saw the recent version from a couple years ago with Kiefer Sutherland.
Is that like really recent, right?
Like a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah, I have not seen
William
that.
Friedkin. It was like William Friedkin's last project.
That's why I know it. Yeah.
That's good if you haven't seen it.
No, I haven't. Okay.
Oh, it's just a courtroom thriller, you know?
Interesting. The bald gentleman on the left, I think, was like an advisor to the movie.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason Robards, I think, passed away a couple of years after, like very shortly after this, I think. Around 2000, I think. He's great in All the President's Men, if you haven't seen that.
It's been a while.
Yeah, he plays Ben Bradley, who Tom Hanks plays in The Post.
Right.
So when you watch The Post, it's like Tom Hanks playing Jason Robards.
I've been thinking about revisiting that one, by the way. The Post.
The Post?
It's been on my mind. Yeah,
that's a good one. Although Seth Meyers did a bit called Newspaper Movie.
Okay.
And it's very funny. It's like a trailer for like your stereotypical 1970s newspaper thriller.
Oh, I'd like to see that.
Oh, it's very funny, and it's so clearly, lampooning the Post. So it's like almost impossible to take that movie 100% seriously.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out.
See this, I think that, like, I don't know how you end this in any other way. So I respect the instinct,
Yeah.
but also still, like, I don't know. Ramsey was pretty shitty at the end. I think when a grown ass adult cold cocks you,
Yeah.
you don't salute them.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what you do. And you think he's admitting that he's wrong here, but he's not
Yeah.
actually doing that. Yeah, you don't want to be sort of like respect.
Yeah, like it's a tough situation, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it gets to just sort of social dynamics and cultural expectations, all of those things. But there is sort of this, like, we hear the triumphant swell of music as Captain Ramsey goes off into the sunset with his dog, right?
Yeah.
And hey, Hunter is a captain now. He got a command thanks to Ramsey, which I guess is some indication he's admitting that he screwed up. But I'm like, this is not, this is there is an element of taking away somebody's dignity,
Mm-hmm.
Now, this right here, where it says principal control will reside with the president of the United States. I don't know about you, but I read that does not make me feel comfort.
No, I know.
It's meant to, like, when you really like, oh, whew, sort of, no loose cannons like Ramsey to worry about. No, just the president of the United States.
I know it plays a little differently. Actually, and it's funny too. I was even thinking, what would have been funny is if they had brought up the original title card where it says the three most, powerful people, president, whatever. And then with naval captain, they should have just drawn a line, like a crayon line.
Yeah.
And then like a cash register sound, cha-ching, like, and then some like song starts playing that's like sums up the movie, like they used to do in the 90s, where it's like Crimson Tide. It isn't easy.
I disagree. I think All Star by Smash Mouth should have been.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I did think about Linkin Park. Ding,
Yeah.
ding, 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 ding.
I think as Ramsey walks away, we hear somebody, and that's me. Hey, now you're an all-star.
And then Denzel's just smiling, shaking his head.
Actually, I think the Linkin Park thing would have worked better with this ending. Yeah.
I think it would have worked better, but I like yours because it's funnier.
Well, hey, here we are, Crimson Tide.
Oh man, this movie more than holds up. This is a
really
great
does.
movie. And by the way, I have to call out whatever 4K version of this that we saw. It is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing. I've been on like the fence a little bit about 4K recently, where of course I want to see a great high resolution of something, but there's so much interference that's happening where people are making their own artistic choices that are not literally what's on the celluloid.
Yeah.
And that kind of bothers me because then I'm seeing someone's interpretation of what a 4K version of this movie looks like versus the actual 4K version of the film. And I thought this was a really well done restoration. I think you can see the details. It looks really crisp and fresh and new, but it still looks filmic. I don't know. I thought it was enough for me to actually think about it and remember that. Like, I thought this was a great restoration.
Well, I think that speaks to how Tony Scott was always able to approach his films. I mean, they are very distinctive, and I think that speaks to what was a singular voice. I mean, I remember our second episode of our podcast. Or it was a third episode. Sorry, where we were remembering his filmography.
Wow, that was the third episode, huh?
By the way, I guess we can say this now, right, Brian? Our third episode, you little leaguers, if you go back and listen. No, you don't want to say this?
Oh, I don't know how, if it's any good or not, but are you getting it the behind the scenes?
Yes.
So wait, what exactly happened? We recorded an entire episode.
Yes.
And there was an audio issue that I'm not remembering exactly.
This is like old school. We're trying to figure this shit out, and there was no Zencast or any of this stuff. This is how far back we go.
Yeah.
So we had to record individually our tracks on our end, and then we would marry those tracks together.
Yes. Yes.
And you had some kind of a foul up on your end where you didn't realize until we were done that none of your audio recorded.
Yes, something was wrong with it. Or it recorded, but there was something wrong with it because I did know what I said. And so basically, that's when Sean was one of our co-hosts, and I said, the episode didn't work. We'll have to do it again. And he was like, I'm not doing that. So I was like, okay. So basically, I looped myself the entire episode. I listened to my screwed up track and heard if you said, what do you think, Brian? And I was like, it's A-okay. You know, on like the bad track, I literally re-recorded myself going, it's A-okay.
Yeah.
And cut all of that back in. Or if there was a laugh, oh, Zachy, you know, kind of a thing. I mean, that was a freaking nightmare. And then I remember several episodes later, Sean had an audio issue. And he's like, all right, guys, we're going to have to re-record the whole thing. And I was like, what? Yeah,
So-
I'll never forget that, the Tony Scott episode.
So that episode is a little Easter egg, and we've been doing this long enough. I feel like we can let the cat out of the bag, right?
Yeah. Man.
What you're hearing is day later, Brian.
Yeah, I guess, you know, you can determine if I'm a good actor or not.
Yeah.
Listening to that one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's our thoughts on Crimson Tide. Also, that's our little peek into the curtain of how things used to go back in the day and in movie film town.
All I got to say is Zencastr is worth every penny.
It surely is. And thanks everybody for listening. If you have any thoughts on our thoughts, you can email us at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast, and message us there. If you're looking for me online, you can find me on social media at Zacky's Corner. That's ZAKIS Corner. Brian, how can people reach you if they so choose?
If they want, I'm on Facebook, but I don't use it as much these days.
Which is good. It's probably for the best.
You know, it's funny. It's one of those things. I know a lot of people are. That reminds me, by the way, kind of a sad sign of the times when it says, you know, the 3 most powerful men, you know, president, whatever, captain. I was like, and now it's like, yeah, guy in hoodie who runs social media thing, right. You know, guy, you know, runs electric car company and somehow is like interfering with government business. Like, it's just like, it's such a, you couldn't make that list up. Now.
So true.
Yeah. No, Facebook, I don't use it very often, but I do think I don't get rid of it because it is a nice way to stay connected to a large group of people that I've accrued over the years.
Yeah.
And Instagram, I mean, if anyone's interested in my pictures of the lemon tree I have, you know, like, it's not very interesting, to be honest, but I think I'm bhall789 on Instagram.
There you go. And hey, if you like what we're doing, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review, leave a star rating. Every little bit helps. We would appreciate it so very much. We also have a Patreon page, Brian.
That's right. If you head over to patreon.com/moviefilmpodcast and hit subscribe for $5 a month, you will access a special feed of this show where our commentaries and our episodes have no ads, no interruptions. It's the cleanest, nicest way to listen to our show. And the money also helps sustain the production of the show, like we talked about, Zencastr and those sorts of expenses. And it also, it helps us. It helps sustain us as we put on this show. So we'd really appreciate it if you head over to patreon.com/moviefilmpodcast. Hit subscribe for the cost of a cup of coffee.
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby. A little shabby.
But hey, with that, on behalf of my partner Brian Hall, my name is Zach Eason. This has been our movie film commentary track for Crimson Tide. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, folks.